Hello once again, Mangamatt here, with the January plus December manga update. I know I'm calling it a little early, but, it seems like I did the same thing last year, and all I can say is it's probably due to the fact that there's just not that much manga that I get coming in right away around that time. Also, keep in mind that December, November is already a really hectic period for getting stuff to come in, plus New Year. So there's a lot of holidays in December to January that are like really close, like the 2 weeks difference. And I guess part of that is why I never really get that much manga to put together to make separate updates with them. But regardless, here's December and January smacked together. Let's start off with the last thing I read for this update, VInland Saga, Volume 7, which of course comprises Volumes 13 and 14 of the regular series, in case you were wondering why they're always thicker. This volume was actually a pretty great one, especially because it gives a good conclusion to the big arc of Thorfinn as the slave for Catel's farmland, and then also we get to learn about what Canute has been doing as the reigning king of Denmark, I believe, and their eventual reunion of sorts to each other. And also we get to see how Thorfinn himself has changed and progressed over this period. He's no longer the bloodthirsty warrior bent on revenge. He's finally created a new credo to his life. And also we finally kick off with the grand journey of Thorfinn and his companions as they set off to the titular Vinland, which those of us that know would eventually become the land of the United States. So it'd be pretty interesting to see what the author does actually for creating his interpretation of pre-colonial Americas. Then next up, Deadman Wonderland, Volume 12. This is the penultimate volume of the Deadman Wonderland series, with just a lot more action. Things are really coming to a head with Ganta versus the Mockingbird, and also them just completely tearing apart what once was the Deadman Wonderland structure building operation. I wish I kind of had more to say, but it's kind of hard sometimes for me to remember specific things in Deadman Wonderland. It all just kind of moves together, I guess. Then next up here we get Red Prowling Devil. This is volumes 5 through 8 of Red Prowling Devil, which again, this is the series about a woman fighter pilot who is conscripted to fight on the behalf of a paramilitary organization as a sort of mercenary fighter. There's not exactly much detail given to precisely why the organization is doing what they do, whether they're working specifically for a particular military branch and what country and what goals, but you understand that Franz is mostly in charge of that, who is also her Naomi's retainer, and the man responsible for getting her out of prison to actually become the Red Prowling Devil. There's a lot of great aerial battles in here. The guy really goes into a lot of detail with the designs and looks of the planes. also, I think there's a fair amount of drama and rivalry that actually crops up along the series between Naomi and a few other pilots who are in a rival military military force, and of course Naomi's skills as a pilot are always being tested, and she's also always self-doubting and questioning herself as to whether or not she even wants to keep doing it. Overall, I think it's a great series. If you're in that kind of, if you're into that kind of thing, reading about sort of military tactics and stuff, it's definitely treated more in a real life kind of manner. Oftentimes Naomi is outclassed because her present fighter plane is of a weaker model, and she'll have to actually use various other tricks to otherwise try and get a leg up on her competition. Sometimes she absolutely can't win against certain opponents. So there's definitely a lot of they know they don't necessarily paint her up to be this sort of messiah or some kind of savant at fighter piloting. There's definitely limitations to even her skills and abilities. It's only 8 volumes. I was a little disappointed at the ending. It didn't feel like it was quite a resolution, but to be fair, it didn't feel like there was much storyline that they were really building up to anyway, so it wasn't a terrible letdown. It was just kind of, it's end. Speaking of letdown endings, oh boy, Gantz 37. Everything's finally finishing here. And, God, you really would think that they would try to have some kind of big emotional climax with their series, but they don't. It's like Kurono fights against like the main villain, the last sort of big baddie, oversized Navi kind of elven warrior person, and that's it. There's no big kind of resolution to some kind of plot line. It's not like there was some kind of some kind of like trick or something to it. They fight, and then out of nowhere there's like this guy here who looks exactly like what's his name from No Country for Old Men, and there's like he's sitting there and he's gonna fight him, and the whole ship just explodes and crashes into Earth, but then Kurono and Kato are still perfectly okay somehow. They crash from a freaking satellite, falling to Earth into the ocean, and they're okay. Like, what's even, they're like in the ocean, then all of a sudden, like, you know, his girlfriend and Kato's little brother, they show up to hug him, and then everybody's cheering for Kurono and Kato. Everybody's happy, and then that's it. That's the end. That's the end of Gantz, is one big fight. Although, I don't know, you know, I shouldn't be this upset about an ending of a series that was always focused around the fight and such. I should have just known that was what was gonna be like, but God, somehow you ruined that. Somehow you screwed that up. And you know, I can't even go into it right now. This is a whole review unto itself. That's what I'm gonna, like, you know, I don't really do a lot of bad reviews of stuff, reviewing stuff that I don't like, because of course everything that I read is something that I've more than likely bought, and nobody wants to buy something that they know they don't like, especially this. But you know, to be fair, it was a good series up until like volume 22, I think. During the whole yokai demons in the middle of Osaka arc, that was the highlight. And then after that, it just kept getting progressively worse and worse and worse. And, you know, I was like, I gotta see where this goes. I gotta see how this concludes. Because if I don't, you know, I don't want to be that guy that shits all over something and then somebody comes around and tells me, oh, but it got better after later. And I was like, what? You know, I don't want to be like that. So it's at least going to be good fodder for that. And don't think that I'm just picking on him because, like, I just don't like him or something. I do. I think that Hiroka Oku, Hiroya Oku, I think he's got great art style, and I definitely like his use of computer CG to enhance his sleek style and to make sort of sci-fi-ish stuff look more sci-fi-ish, and it really helps with the shading using computer graphics to kind of make it even more blended. But so okay, that goes into the next one that I'm the next topic, which again, to show that I'm a fair sport about it, Inuyahsiki Volume 2, which again, I actually really like this series. Yeah, I know, same dude who did Gantz, but you know, first of all, I was already intrigued because it's this older person who is the main character of it, and I always thought that was a very interesting kind of choice. And this volume specifically, we focus on another person, Hiro Shishigami, who is yet another person who has gained robotic cybernetic enhancements, the same as the elderly man, Inuyahsiki, and so we're gonna see, I guess, how these two actually face off against each other. One who is an older man who's bent on these old ideals of chivalry versus Shishigami, who is a younger man and is completely just about himself with his powers and abilities, and just whether or not, like, the two which ideal wins out in the end, which is a very interesting kind of idea, because usually it's the younger protagonist that's usually trying to overthrow or defeat the physically older antagonist. Like, you know, sort of this symbolism of, like, you know, the old ways losing out to newer ideals or something. But of course here we have a complete opposite of that. So I mean, again, I really like this idea, and even better, Oku in a couple interviews, I think, has said that he only plans for this series to really last about like 10-ish volumes. So if he can keep it short like that, then there's no reason for me to think that this could be a really great turnaround for his for my likability of him. Next up, we get Junji Ito's Yon and Mu Cat Diary. Yeah, Junji Ito's Cat Diary, Yon and Mu, which this is absolutely wonderful. If you're a big fan of Cheese Sweet Home or What's Michael, or you just overall are a big fan of cats in altogether, there's lots of great little humor and fun bits in here with Junji Ito's two cats who are both trying to, you know, interact with each other and otherwise do silly cat things inside of Junji Ito's home, and also his interactions with his wife that are also sometimes related to his interaction with the cats. Overall, I thought it was really fun, and it's definitely a breakaway from Ito's usual style of disturbing horror stories, and especially his his art style is strangely very fun to see when he's trying to do more humor based, and especially because like his art style with his thin lines and sickly looking bodies, they sort of make things even more hilarious when Ito as himself is reacting to trying to get the cats to want to lay next to him in bed, or if he's trying to play with them and the cats don't want to play with him, but they want to play with his wife because his wife knows just how to tease the cats with the toy to get them to interact. It's very fun, and I love the hell out of it. I guess there's just something about cats that just make them instantly pure gold for just making a whole series about funny stuff that they do. I guess you can't really do the same thing with dogs. Dogs, they're just not quite as inquisitive. They're not as they're not as quirky, I guess, as cats are, or something. I don't know. But otherwise, highly recommend it if you're a big cat person and you like, and also if you like kind of to see Junji Ito in a kind of his off time kind of way. Next up, Attack on Titan Volume 17, where we actually get some Titan fighting. It's a very odd kind of sequence, and it's even more odd because the Titan that they fight in this, which is of course a one of those what do you call it, those like offbeat or the unique Titans. This one is a unique Titan in the sense of kind of how big it is and just how nearly unstoppable it is, and actually the way that they do fight it and stop is again a very unique kind of way. I just wish that it didn't get introduced and then wrapped up all in one volume, when in previous volumes we've seen the Survey Corps team and them fight the female Titan, and that spanned several volumes, and even them fighting the Armor Titan and the Colossal Titan, those taking several volumes here and there, just to see them introduce and then immediately squash one particular unique type Titan in this volume felt kind of rushed. And then also, there was a lot more sort of political buildup. But what's good is that at least at the end of this volume, we get the introduction of another unique Titan that we hadn't seen in a while, and we even get to see more who is actually who is actually the man behind things as far as that particular Titan and what they have to reveal. And also it looks like they're still on the track to finding and recovering whatever the heck is in Aaron's father's basement. How long have they been going after that thing? So overall, it is another just okay volume. It doesn't really have any standout moments in it. Let's see. Next up, Pokémon XY Volume 5, which this actually did have some interesting revelations in it, specifically with X trying to learn to fight in a more cohesive and more team style, and then also with what's her name, Y, a little bit of her backstory as to her becoming a specialist in a sort of flight aerial combat style. You get a little bit of that history, and then also another neat thing is we get to learn about Team Flare's particular plans, which actually involve Han Edge and Aegis Shield as a part of a larger sort of mind control type conspiracy that they also plan to use to gain control of the two legendaries, Xeris and Yevtal. I've only read those names. I've never actually watched the show or anything to learn how they're pronounced. Sorry, but yeah, the two legendaries for this storyline. But overall, again, really great little tidbit story. I can't wait for more Pokemon XY, especially with kind of what they're doing with the Mega Stones. Next up, Seven Deadly Sins, Volume 11, which gives us the introduction of the the sixth deadly sin, her introduction and kind of what she's about, and actually we get a lot of neat backstory between what happened with Meliodas and Gil Thunder in their sort of backstory history with each other. Overall, a great story for moving things along, and also bringing in a new deadly sin is always good. Just one more sin to go, and then finally have the whole cast of characters for your high fantasy epic series. Overall, a lot of fun, and I hope the anime itself gets renewed for some more seasons. And let's see, next up here we get Toriko 31, which is the first full volume entering into the new Gourmet World arc, where Toriko and the gang are encountering all kinds of unbelievable, unstoppable kind of threats. They're encountering lands that are made out of mist and clouds. They're coming across oceans that have thorns in them, and even some weird frog dude that just drives across the desert in a little frog car, who becomes kind of their guide to some of the stranger stuff in the new Gourmet World. Overall, it was a really fun little volume talking about kind of all the bigger disturbing threats out there, and especially a lot of especially as they finding out that there's actually a whole new level of sort of unstoppable beasts out there that they can't even approach. They're just so far out of their league. And so anytime you encounter something like that in a story, it always kind of perks you up. Yeah, with Nightmare Hercules. That's the name of just this one giant horse. Nightmare Hercules is so massive and devastating that each of its hoof prints leaves kind of this barren wasteland because his aura is so strong, nothing can grow there. Just crazy stuff like that really it shows you kind of what Toriko's about, and really makes you want to read the next one to find out more about this crazy, weird world. Next up, Satoshi Kon's Opus, which I had read the Seraphim something wings that he did with Mamoru Oshii, and then I also read his Dream Fossil, and this was, I felt like, well, I guess I should get Opus to see how that is. Overall, this was a very entertaining read. At least I enjoyed it. I know a couple of guys that have also read it and said they didn't really care for it. Overall, it's still sadly an unfinished work, like a lot of Satoshi Kon's other manga ventures. But it actually kind of works in the sense of this storyline here, because the main story is about an author who is writing this sort of Akira-like psychic action sci-fi series, and he's having trouble getting to the last page of his story because I guess he's having kind of self-doubt about it, really finishing things or whatnot, and then the weirdest thing happens. He actually gets sucked into his own story, and he actually finds out that he's kind of sort of a god inside his own world, because again, it's a creation of his imagination, so anything he comes up with is real in that world. And then he'll come back out of that again, and then he'll struggle with real life and then get plunged back into it again, and and then there's all kinds of plots. The villain of the story is trying to kill him so that it never reaches the conclusion, and then one of the main characters doesn't want him to finish it because they don't want to die at the end because they read what he was planning for a final page, and it goes into a lot of this interesting sort of metafiction into itself about I guess one man's struggle to try and finish a work. And then what's even more clever is that at the end you sort of see that the artwork kind of deteriorates. It becomes more and more unfinished as it goes along. Which again, most of this is a result of the fact that Satoshi Kon actually never got around to really finishing it. But you know, if you want to, you can sort of pretend that like the more unfinished parts of the story are actually him. Is actually just the story not getting completed in that respect. So you can create your own kind of headcanon with that. Overall, again, I thought it was another fantastic Satoshi Kon story, much like something like Millennium Actress, where again the blurring between reality and storytelling is always being merged around, and then even something like in Paranormal Agent, where there was a lot of similar themes like that. Really dug it a lot. Then, Assassination Classroom, Volume 7, which, again, this is a pretty hilarious volume right here, featuring the Class E students all having to compete in their classroom curriculums and try and score higher on their different tests to ultimately get Kuro Sensei to let them blow off one of his tentacles. Yeah, Kuro Sensei explains that for every kid that scores in their top score in the school in a particular subject, that he will let them blow off one of his tentacles. And of course, every tentacle they blow off, he's a little bit slower. So it's to their advantage to score as high on the test as they can, which is kind of funny. And what's interesting too is how they actually correlate some of the different classroom tests in a funny sort of way. You know, it'd be really easy to have different to just have the kids sitting there scribbling on their tests and just kind of showing them like struggling, but you know, you can't really draw like what's going on in your head while you're taking a test. But actually Yusei Masui actually come up with a pretty interesting way, which was first part he used the English class as sort of this Colosseum battle where again like a English class would be like if you were fighting against a big minotaur like this, and you know, your hammer is supposed to be you selecting the right answer at the right time, and you know, every time he hits, every time they're hitting him, they're trying to like score the right answer on the test, and I think that's a pretty interesting one. The other fun one is actually the science one, where which this actually is a pretty unique kind of demonstration of how to approach science, where you have the one where again science is represented as being sort of magic based and not physical like the hammer is, and of course he's trying to weave all kinds of spells to knock off the armor to get to the answer with actually getting down to the core of the storyline of the answer of the piece, which the little girl, of course, who's big into chemistry, actually solves the answer, and he becomes like this little happy little mud monster guy under the little happy slime under the armor, which a pretty neat kind of way to explain how science is, because of course the one kid thinks that he can just memorize all the different terms and stuff and then just throw it right at the paper and then answer it. But of course, reality wise, you can't do that with science, especially with, you know, chemistry and biology, because memorizing the terms is only part of the process. You also have to actually understand what the different processes are, and then be able to explain it out in an answer, which again is perfectly illustrated there, where while he wanted to just do a bunch of prearranged, memorized answers to different problems, and it becomes this impenetrable, sort of frightful creature. The girl, who actually understands all the concepts being talked about, actually gets to turn the monster into this sort of sweet little good guy, because she took the time to understand how the specific nature of electricity or something, and after that, it's not scary anymore. Once you understand a scientific concept, it's not scary or unapproachable anymore. A lot of people that's why a lot of people, I think, don't like science and chemistry, is because they don't try to understand it, and as long as you don't understand something, you can never actually like it or relate to it, and because of that, you'll never actually have fun with it. But I thought that was a pretty clever kind of thing. And then, of course, they represent that the one student who's really good at all the subjects has all the different tools under his shirt. Overall, that's probably the most fun part about reading it. And then the other fun part being that that at the end of the various exams, when Kuro Sensei is letting everybody line up to then shoot his legs off, he thinks that they only scored like a few times in the highest bracket, and he was willing to say, like, oh, okay, well, I only lose a few. I'm still running at like over Mach speed, no problem. But then a few of the delinquent kids in the class, they actually wind up scoring all three of them wind up scoring highest in home economics, which he was sort of shocked with, because he was saying, like, but no, that's a gimme class, it doesn't count. But because it was actually written down as a part of the school curriculum, they argue that it still counts as being included with the rest of the various coursework. And so Kuro thought that he was only going to lose like 2 or 3 tentacles, but he winds up losing like 6, because these kids all poured all of their study time into just scoring highest on the easiest subject exam, which I thought that was, again, absolutely hilarious for, again, what they're trying to do. And then the final part is them winding up on this sort of island beach vacation, where it's, again, all covered in water, which, again, Kuro Sensei has a distinct weakness against water. So they think that, okay, we'll shoot off all of his tentacles, and then he'll be on this island so we can finally kill him once and for all. And what you find out at the end is actually what happens when Kuro Sensei's sort of final ultimate trump card, when he thinks he's really about to die. And it's pretty hilarious and pretty fun what he does at the end of that. Okay, next up, we get the final volume of Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin, which, again, was an absolutely wonderful ending to an absolutely wonderful series. It almost makes sense that Amuro and Char, their final conflict with each other is outside their mobile suits, and they're fighting with with just swords. Like, they're fighting with probably the most primitive sort of weapons you could ever have, and it's just glorious. It's something like Kirk versus Khan. It's one of these ultimate face off in ideals, or again, like Luke versus Vader, which again, you could definitely say there's a lot of parallels in Mobile Suit Gundam with Star Wars, you know, in the sense of, well, one of the main weapons of the series is the beam saber, which again is a total copy of the lightsaber. And then, you know, new types, you could say, have various linkage to the Jedis. And of course, there's the obvious connection of the fact that a lot of themes and ideas in Star Wars were lifted from Japanese cinema, various kind of ideals and sort of storyline processes. So there's sort of a built-in similarity to it, but at the same time, you know, I would never say that a person who likes Star Wars would necessarily like Mobile Suit Gundam. You know, they're theme tone-wise, they're very different kind of series. You know, Star Wars is high fantasy action. Mobile Suit Gundam deals a lot more with politics and also the sort of gritty realization that comes with going to war, and a lot more serious subject matters with that. But again, anyone who's a big fan of sci-fi, anybody who wants to see one of the quintessential mech series that was ever put out, Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin is definitely that series. It's like the introduction to everything that you see in other series. And also, again, just gorgeous hardcover, gorgeous coloring on several of the pages in here. Hell, even when it's not colored, it's still gorgeous. And you know, I would put it to anybody to try and find me a better, well constructed, well executed mecha series than this. And so, the final thing to talk about in this update, a new series that I started just after the last update, and I chose to wait until now to bring it up. We get Shokugeki no Soma, also known as Food Wars. Food Wars has literally been just an absolute standout, wonderful series for me. You know, anybody who's watched my updates and all the manga series I talk about knows that I absolutely love food-based manga. You know, Oishinbo. I'm gonna be getting Iron Walk John soon. You know, What Did You Eat Yesterday? Not love but food. Not friends but food is something love. I wish I remember that title, but it's another Fumi Yoshinaga one. It's a long, but needless to say, I love food-based manga. It is because, of course, like all living things, I love food. I can't live without it. And Food Wars gives me, it scratches that itch for me. It's a series about Soma, who runs a restaurant with his father, except that his father has decided once again to go on a long journey of discovery and sort of hone his skills as a chef. And so he told Soma to go enlist in this food academy, a food academy culinary school. But the only problem with this food academy culinary school is that it has extremely high regulations for its applicants. So what they do then is they sort of put all their various students up against each other in various food-based competitions to see who can outperform the other one in various dishes. Might one might be make me an egg dish, and you know, make it to where you can eat it in the morning. You know, another one might be make a ramen noodle dish, make a meat dish, all kinds of stuff. And you see all the various characters as they struggle to try and come up with a food and try and use it to their advantage. Different characters use different kind of food preparation techniques. You know, Soma is kind of a jack of all trades, but he always emphasizes on the availability of an ingredient. Like, Soma would never try and use a very hard to find or an expensive ingredient in his dish, because he would say that that kind of defeats the purpose of making it for everyone if not everyone can obviously enjoy it. You know, you also have other culinary specialists like what's her name, yeah, Arena Nakiri, who is an expert at food tasting. She's basically a prodigy at tasting foods with an extreme delicacy to her palate, and also just a lot of other fun minor characters. Now, there is one kind of minor gripe I would have at the series, and that's I think there's a little bit of fan service going on in the series, especially with what's her name, the one girl in here, yeah, Ikumi Mito, her, because of course she's always wearing you know, more revealing outfits to her various matches and stuff, which again, you know, I guess it's not a big deal for me, but it's like, I see what you're doing, and I'm a little, and it feels kind of like you're taking a low road for just a cheap shot at something. Like, I feel like he's putting it in there because he thinks that that's what readers are coming in looking for, and not just some really cool, interesting drama revolving around food. But again, it doesn't detract too much from it. It's not like High School of the Dead, where the fan service is blatantly in your face all the time. It's just, you know, a little, just a happy little sprinkling. So, I mean, I guess I don't really, I'm not that upset about it, to a degree. The only other part is at least early on, they've done it a little less lately, is that when especially women try a dish, they will sort of have this kind of emotional outburst when they eat it. And sometimes various, you know, if you read it a certain way, you could say that they're having a very charged sort of emotional, almost visceral kind of reaction to their meal, that you could say is they're sort of being satisfied by what they're eating. And, you know, when that happens too, I'm kind of just rolling my eyes a little. But overall, it delivers on gorgeous looking food, which always looks very detailed, and even better, is very you know, interesting to look at and see. You know, it's basically food porn, and I totally love that. I totally love looking at just food and just drooling over it. And then what's even better, the absolute best thing about this series that I was hoping for more than anything, was that at the end of every chapter or so, they always put a list of recipes to make it at home for yourself. So every food that you see in Food Wars, you can make yourself at home, which again, I absolutely love that. I especially love the fact that predominantly, majority-wise, most of the food that they present in Food Wars, you can very easily make at home. There aren't a lot of very odd or obscure kind of ingredients that you could find very easily at, say, Japan or an Asian food market that you maybe wouldn't necessarily find in your local grocery store. No, most of the food in here you can find just about at any regular grocery store you go to and make it yourself at home. Which, again, that's really great. Makes me more engaged in wanting to read more of it. And there's also lots of great humor in it, with the two French brothers and their love of cooking things with vegetables, and then also the Indian guy who loves cooking with spices, and also his assistant who is a actual teacher there at the school in spices. But of course, the obvious joke between the two is that she is an absolute genius at spice work, and she can almost write out an entire chemical formula for a delicious food item. But the downside is she has absolutely no skill whatsoever in cooking. And instead she has to relate that duty to her assistant, who is not only really good at cooking, but he also has a highly developed sense of smell. And he actually banks a lot of his success in food competition based on smell alone. He thinks that smell is a very vital and integral part of the dining experience. If something doesn't smell good, it's not going to taste good, and you're not going to like it. So it's also another interesting yet still valid approach to food. And overall, I think that they're all absolutely delightful series. I'm really glad that something like this is really hitting it out of the park, that this wasn't just some, 10-volume little jaunt. We have a few ideas and then we roll with it. I want it to be another 26-volume epic like Yakitate Japan. I want more of that out there. And I'm also really excited about all the sports manga that's going to be coming out soon, like Kuroko's basketball and Hayaku, the volleyball manga series that I know people have been watching like crazy over on Crunchyroll. But as far as the manga updates go, this is all I got for the December-January block, and look forward to giving y'all some more manga updates, throughout the year and years to follow, I'm sure. So, tune in again, and Happy New Year.